Welcome to Stories of Amazing Grace. The views and opinions expressed on Stories of Amazing Grace are those of the guests appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the Madison Church of Christ or the producer of this program. Enjoy. Well, good evening. I'm Larry Souder, and welcome to Stories of Amazing Grace. We're coming to you from Bixter Chapel at the Madison Church of Christ in Madison, Tennessee. Thank you for joining us on YouTube and being a part of our live audience. We meet the first Wednesday of each month, and we're glad to have you here and invite you to invite others to come and be a part of our program. Well, our theme scripture comes from Romans chapter 8, verses 38 through 39. I'm sure that nothing can separate us from God's love. Not life or death, not angels or spirits, not the present or the future, and not powers above or powers below. Nothing in all creation can separate us from God's love for us in Christ Jesus our Lord. Our guest tonight is one of our own. Traci Perkins is here. She says she had a normal childhood. As you look at her, you may not think that, but she says she had a normal childhood. But during a point in her life, not long after her childhood, she says she went looking for love in all the wrong places. She was married young, at age 17, had a child, divorced, later had another child, put that child up for adoption. Made a very difficult decision to do that. So you're going to hear her story tonight. But first, we're going to help her celebrate her 60th birthday, which was a year ago, and this is how she celebrated.
Halfway there, you ready, Skirter?
Yes, I am.
I'll see you out there, okay?
See ya.
Here we go. Woo!
Amazing.
You have a good time?
Awesome. Had to admit I had a little oh crap moment there at the door, but life's good.
Awesome. Give me a high five, baby. There you go. Atta girl. Over here.
Ladies and gentlemen, please make welcome Traci Perkins. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Have a seat. What kind of moment you say you had?
It was an oh crap moment. They told us not to grab the door. Well, when you have a 200-pound man strapped to your back and the wind's coming at you, you grab the door.
Yeah. Well, why did you do that?
Why not?
Yeah, why not?
My dad told me years ago that he had always wanted to do it. So when he turned 70, I said, come on, Dad, let's go. He said, I'm too old. I thought, well, I really wanted somebody to do it with me, but Richard won't. So for my 60th birthday, I jumped out of an airplane.
Do we plan something for 70?
My grandson, my oldest grandson, will be 18 the year I turned 65, and he thinks he wants to do it.
Very good.
So I would do it again. I told him that's the straightest my hair's ever been.
Thank you for being here. We want to talk about something a little more serious about your life, and that involves having to give up a child later on in your life. But let's begin with your childhood. You gave me some notes earlier, and you said you had a normal childhood. Tell me, how normal was your childhood?
It was your typical 60s and 70s childhood. Mom was a stay-at-home mom. We had dinner together every night, big Sunday dinner after church. We were at church 3 times a week or more. I was the third of 4 children. There's actually almost 9 years between me and my younger brother. So I was the baby for 9 years. I didn't adapt well to having a younger sibling.
We have a shot of you as a baby, I think.
It was a normal childhood. I was in the band. In fact, my daughter introduced me to her friends as, this is my mom, Traci. She was a band buddy. Apparently in the 80s and 90s, being a band buddy is a bad thing. I was a nerd. I was very quiet, believe it or not.
I think you came out of that.
I was very shy. Somebody told Richard right after we met that they used to pay me $0.25 to say good morning.
Really?
Because I wouldn't, I was just.
You'd have to pay me more than that.
Yeah. It wasn't worth any more than $0.25. But like I said, we went to church. We were there 3 times a week. My dad was a deacon. I was a daddy's girl. My dad, and I'm still a daddy's girl. My dad, in fact, introduced me to somebody that he worked with as the son he never had. And it was at a place that my younger brother actually worked. So I am my father's child.
And
you have him to think about it.
You played sports?
I did not. Yeah, I did not ever play, no. I could trip over air.
Oh.
My dad played fast-pitch softball from the time I was born, I guess, until he was 65. Played fast pitch, and that was my dad's softball uniform and glove.
And you lost your arm, I understand, during this.
Yeah, that was an old sports injury there. I have scars on my pinky toes where I would walk so close to my daddy after games. He wore metal cleats that he stepped on my toes numerous times. I never learned.
Were you a spiritual family?
We were. From the time I can remember until I was about in the 8th or 9th grade. We were at church. Dad was a deacon. When I went to my parents and told them that I wanted to be baptized, rather than Dad just say, okay, you can be baptized next Sunday, for 2 weeks we studied as a family every night. And he had to be sure, because my 2 best friends had been baptized the Sunday that I went home and announced that I was ready. So he had to be sure I was ready. So we were very spiritual. We did devotionals every night. If you're 60s, 70s, we did the Royal Canadian Air Force exercise book every night and had our devotional as a family. We were just, church was a part of who we were. And then when, like I said, when I was about in the 8th or 9th grade, my older brother got in trouble at school, and all of a sudden we just quit going to church.
Just stopped.
Just stopped.
Now, you were a nerd in high school.
I was a nerd in high school.
But one of the most popular boys asked you out?
He did. He was a jock, but he was a band buddy, and I guess it's okay if you're a jock and a band buddy. You're not as much of a nerd, but he was very popular, asked me to go see The Exorcist. That was our first date. Should have had a clue then.
Were you still going to church in this time when you saw?
No, we were not going to church at this time. This was my junior year in high school, and he asked me to go see The Exorcist. A couple of weeks later, told me he loved me, and a couple of weeks later asked me to marry him. So I graduated from high school in May of 1975 and got married in September of 1975.
You were 17.
I was 17. I got married a month before my 18th birthday. I don't recommend that. If you have 17-year-old girls, tell them no.
Now, how long after did you have your first child, Amanda?
Amanda was born, we got married in 75. She was born in 78. We'd been married about 3 years when Amanda was born. She was not planned. He didn't work half the time, and the other half of the time he used his money to play video games and buy drugs. So not long after she was born, well, she was about 18 months old, and drugs and video games, pinball games at that time, were his mistress. So I decided I can support 3 people or I can support 2 people. And he was the easiest one to eliminate from the equation. So we divorced after we'd been married almost 5 years.
I think we have a shot of Amanda here. I believe. This her?
That's her.
Okay.
That's her.
And,
she was maybe 2 in that picture.
And the next shot here, a little older.
Yeah. Ignore the pleather shorts. That was...
Those are hot pants.
That was just, Amanda is my very best friend. She has been, of course, she was 2 when her dad and I divorced, so we kind of grew up together. I was 22. So we had a lot of close conversations, still do.
So he turned out to be not too good.
Yeah,
so you
not
divorced.
too good. We divorced, and I waited until I'd been married and divorced, or married, had a baby and divorced, to sow my wild oats. So it was in the 80s. Urban Cowboy was the movie, and Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places was my theme song.
Now, how did you sow wild oats?
I would start at happy hour and on Friday in the bars or nightclubs, and I would end in time to go home and sleep and be able to go to work on Monday morning. Looking back now, I can see that I was a functional alcoholic. Because drinking was how I killed any pain or any loneliness. I started looking for a father figure for Amanda. I decided after I've been divorced a year, I'll get serious. A year rolled around, and I said, maybe 5 years. 5 rolled around, and I said, maybe 10. It was 20 before Richard and I met and married.
And during that time?
I found myself homeless after being evicted. And I had a friend who was also a co-worker, my superior, and he was my friend with benefits. And I found myself homeless. My ex-in-laws allowed me to sleep on their couch, and I sent Amanda to live with my parents for the summer while I got myself together. And again, I used that time to be a party girl and found myself, I found an apartment. It was a 2-room apartment, not 2 bedrooms, 2 rooms. My kitchen could be in my living room or my bedroom, depending on where I put the bed and the couch. And I brought Amanda home, and I found out I was pregnant. So I'm 25 years old, married, have a baby, divorced, living in a 2-room apartment, pregnant.
And you had a job during this time?
I had a job. I have worked in the insurance industry. Well, I don't anymore. I just retired. But I worked in the insurance industry. Insurance was my job until I could have my babies and quit work. And I just quit work in March of this year. So, but I worked for an insurance company in Memphis.
So what'd you do then? You were pregnant and you're going to have a child. What'd you do about work?
I went to work.
Okay.
A friend of mine at work, it was Halloween, right around Halloween, and I dressed as Smurfette. And she called me to her desk and said, "Are you pregnant?" I'm like, "Oh, nobody was supposed to know." And I said, "Yes." She said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I honestly haven't got a clue." Abortion was not an option for me. I was just a good kid. when I say I had a normal childhood, I got one spanking that I remember. I did get my mouth washed out with soap when I was 4 for saying darn. That's how strict my parents were.
What was that word again?
Darn. Yeah. But abortion just wasn't an option. I was a good girl. My sister had and I wasn't real sure about adoption. My sister had a child a couple of months before Amanda was born, and she kept him for 7 months and gave him up, took him to the orphanage. And I thought, I can't do that to my parents. I'm the good daughter. I can't do that. I can't break their hearts again. But I also knew I couldn't keep this child. So my coworker said, I know a family who has tried several times to adopt a baby. Would you be interested in talking to them? Yeah, why not? So we talked on the phone. I never met the people that adopted Michael. That was my choice. I didn't want to adopt. I didn't want to meet him. So I talked to the lawyer, and we had all the paperwork signed and ready before I told anybody except my friend that guessed. And then I had to tell my parents because it's Thanksgiving. And remember, I'm the good daughter, and now I'm a failure and a disappointment in my eyes to my parents because I'm the one that never got in trouble. I made the grades in school. I did all my homework. I had a job. So I was the good daughter. I don't really remember their reaction. My mother never really, I don't think Mom ever really accepted it. My favorite uncle died in February, the year I was pregnant, and she didn't tell me until after the funeral because in my mind, I was an embarrassment to her to go to my family because my grandfather was an elder in the church until he was probably 85 years old. So to me, I was an embarrassment to them.
So where'd you go to for strength here? You were not going to church. Your family has almost abandoned you. So what was it, a bottle?
Not at the time. I had stopped drinking partly because I was pregnant and partly because I had no money. I got a lot of my strength from Amanda. I mean, how do you tell a 4-year-old that you're going to have a baby, but you're not going to keep this baby? But she's always been just amazing with anything life throws at her. And so I explained to her that God had put this baby in Mommy's tummy, but we weren't going to keep this baby. It's not ours. We're going to give it to somebody who can't have a baby of their own. And she accepted it. She goes, okay, can I go play Mr. Potato Head now? So I guess a lot of my strength came from Michael's parents. While I never met them, his adopted dad, called me at least once a week. And every time I went to the doctor, he called. They would send me little gifts. In fact, I have a plaque that has been, Michael's 35. And I have a plaque that has hung in every kitchen that I've had since I was pregnant with him. And it just simply says, those who bring sunshine to the lives of others cannot keep it from themselves. Doesn't match anything, but it hangs in my kitchen. So I got a lot of my strength from them. People at work were supportive, but they also had all those questions. I told them I was going to be a surrogate mother because I didn't want to get into it. Well, how much are you going to make? What are you going to do with all that money? So, you get the usual nosy questions. But Michael's grandparents were a huge support to me. They came and took me to the doctor. They they lived on a farm, kept me in fruits and vegetables. They found out I had low iron one time, and liver's good for low iron. Pig liver is not good.
What's it taste like?
It's bad. I don't remember. I cooked it, and I just remember it's bad. But that was my support system, was his grandparents.
And tell me the situation when you had the child. You're in the hospital and you were alone.
I was alone. Michael was born on April 14th. I was 2 weeks late. I had resorted to even drinking a bottle of Fletcher's Castoria, trying to throw myself into labor. It didn't help. I spent a lot of time in the bathroom, but I didn't go into labor. But his family lived, Warren in Virginia. Michael's grandparents lived in Summerville, Tennessee, which is about an hour from where I lived in Memphis. And I called them and said, I think I'm in labor. It was storming. And I thought, come on, because the weather's bad, so y'all need to come on and we'll go to the hospital. But please don't call Warren and Phyllis until that you know they're going to keep me. And Warren and Phyllis beat us to the hospital. So the night that he was born, in the labor room, it was just me and Matt Dillon on TV. And then when they wheeled me into the delivery room, my doctor knew what was going on. He knew I didn't want to hear the baby cry. I didn't want to see the baby. I wanted to know nothing about the baby. So he had a nurse cover the mirror, and I woke up in my room.
Not knowing boy or girl or
Not
anything.
knowing boy or girl. Then the next day, a nurse came in, and she said the adoption's not fine. The adoption's not legally final yet. You have to sign circumcision papers. So I knew it was a boy. So there goes that plan. And then the night before I left the hospital, this was before cell phones and when they had a curfew on when phone calls could be directed to the rooms. And the nurse came in about 10:30 and she said, there's somebody in the nursery that wants to talk to you. And it was Warren and Phyllis. They were going to take the baby home the next day, and they just wanted to thank me and to talk to me before they left. One thing that when I was pregnant, Phyllis wouldn't accept, she didn't believe that she was going to get the baby. Because like I said, this was the third or fourth. And the one right before me, they called as they were leaving to go get the baby from the hospital. And the birth mother had changed her mind.
So she's been through this before.
So she's been through it. And one morning I was getting ready for work and I was late. And Warren called and said, Phyllis wants to talk to you. And she hadn't wanted to talk to me until now. So I took the time and she said, I just want to ask you if I can go buy you some maternity clothes because I'll never get to buy myself any. And it never clicked. And yeah, sure, because I'm wearing Goodwill and hand-me-downs. And when they picked me up to go to the doctor the next time, they had Dillard's boxes. And I'm thinking, maybe they'll adopt me too. Well, this is pretty cool. So I left the hospital. It was a Saturday. And I hadn't really let myself have any kind of feelings, emotions, attachment, nothing. I loved the child because it was a child, but I wasn't in love with the child. And we went to the court clerk's office to sign the adoption papers. And they had typed his name on the papers and then realized what they'd done and whited it out. Well, the judge was late. Like, you leave a postpartum female in a room with white out and she's going to hold it up to the light and find out what was on there. So I had a name. And that was just it. I had a name. I knew it was a boy.
What were your thoughts? You said you love the child, but not in love with the child. Can you elaborate on that a little more?
I would not allow myself to feel any emotional attachment to him because I was afraid that if I did, then I would change my mind. And then that would put an unnecessary burden on my daughter, on my parents. At the time I was pregnant, my little brother's girlfriend was pregnant. My sister had 2 children illegitimately and had a miscarriage. So when we fail, we fail. We did it right. we just all went over the deep end. So I just wouldn't let myself feel any attachment. I didn't want to know what he looked like because I didn't want to be walking through a store somewhere.
But you wondered, I'm sure.
I did. Every year on his birthday, I thought about him. I wondered if he was happy, if he was healthy. Did they go to church? I had written a letter when I was pregnant and just explained my reasoning for giving him up for adoption. So I'd always wondered.
What was your lifestyle after the delivery of the child? Did you go back to the bar scene, or?
After a while, I did. And I mean, not like I did before him. I didn't run around with a good crowd when I was in Memphis. When in 1987, I made the decision. Amanda was going to have to go to the school that I went to for 12 years. And when I went to this school, it was a great school. But Memphis being Memphis, it's not so great anymore. And the next year, she was going to have to go to that school. And I thought, I can't send her there. I can't do it. I've got to get out of Memphis. And once again, a man. I had met a man in Nashville, I traveled for work, and I had come to Nashville and gone to Little Rock. Well, then I met him, and I thought, okay, I'll just go to Nashville. So the day after Amanda's 9th birthday, my mom and dad and my brother packed everything I owned, and I headed to Nashville knowing my 9-year-old daughter, who hated me for moving her away from her family, and a man. And came to Nashville. Then when about 6 years later, well, maybe two or 3 years later, a friend of mine at work her stepson was going to have some surgery. And it was fairly serious. And I started thinking, I just left Memphis. They don't have a clue how to get in touch with me if Michael needs anything. Mm-hmm. So I wrote a letter and just said, hey, this is where I work. I didn't give him my home address. I didn't give him my home phone number. If he needs anything, and I capitalize needs, please let me know. And about the time the letter would have had time to get to Somerville, I got a phone call at work, and through tears, Michael's dad is a crier, and through tears he said, Traci, he's so happy, he's healthy, he plays the piano, he's smart, he loves God, and just on and on and on. And okay, thanks for telling me.
Did you really want to see him then?
No.
No.
I had no desire when he was young. And at the time, I still wasn't in a good place. Spiritually, financially, emotionally, I wasn't in a good place. I showed up to church, but that was about the story of it.
When did Amanda realize she had a brother?
She always knew she had a sibling. She didn't know it was a brother until she was 18. But when she was a little girl, she would say, yeah, when my mom was pregnant and I went to live with Granny and Barney. And they would say, oh, did she tell you about that? And she would go, no, I was there. And people would look at me, and then I'd have to tell the story. I mean, what do? Go, hi, I'm Traci, and I gave a child up for adoption. That's just not how you introduce yourself. So when she was 18, she asked me. And because we had always been talked openly about it. If she had any questions, I would answer her questions until she got to, is it a brother or a sister? Because her dad remarried, and she had a half-brother and a step-brother from her dad's second marriage. So she wasn't lacking for siblings.
Where did Richard come into the picture?
Richard and I met in November of 2000. We went to a hockey game. It was a blind date. Neither of us looking for a relationship. I had dated this guy that I moved to Nashville to be with for 10 years. We were no closer to getting married the day we broke up than we were the day we met. So I decided I needed to learn to like myself. Richard, and so some friends said, hey, I've got this friend, he's not looking for anything. His wife passed away a couple of years. He just wants somebody to go to dinner with. I went, yeah, okay, I can go to dinner. So we met in November of 2000, and a couple of weeks later, we went out. And then on Monday, before Thanksgiving, I got flowers from him. And the card said, don't forget to stop and smell the roses. I'll supply the roses. And I thought, this guy's getting serious. We've got to stop it now. We're going to cut him off at the pass.
Nip it in the bud.
So I had invited him for Thanksgiving, and that's when I pulled all my skeletons out of the closet. I had gone through a period my entire family had gone through a period of all of us being alcoholics. I pulled out the alcoholism, the divorce, the adoption, anything I could to scare him off. And 17 years later, he's still here, so.
Didn't work, huh?
No.
Your first contact with Richard, tell me about that.
My first contact with Michael?
With Michael, I'm sorry, your son.
It was January 6, 2011. I had just gotten home from work and was cooking dinner, and I thought I'll check Facebook, see what's going on. And a message popped up, and I thought, oh, I don't recognize this name. Just a few months before, I had Googled his name and address and his parents and found an address and carried it around for about 6 months and had just thrown it away a couple of weeks before. So this message pops up, and it just says, hi, I don't rightly know how to say this, but my name is Michael, and I think you're my mother.
What do you do? What do you do when you get that?
There's 2 times since Richard and I have known each other that he's seen me speechless. One time was when a guy in Montreal asked me if I wanted cream in my coffee. He asked me in French. And this was the other time. And I just sat there. I was reading this email, and I'm sitting there going, oh, my, oh, my. And Richard's sitting in his chair going, what? What are you reading? Who is it from? And all I can say is, oh, my, oh, my. And I finally choke out, it's my son. And like I say, Richard had always known about him. So it wasn't really a shock that there was this kid. And the 27-year dam broke. And a couple of hours later, I wrote Michael back, and we started communicating via Facebook. Then his birthday that year was the first time I told him I loved him. And his response was, I wondered who would say it first. So there was never any animosity. He had seen the letter that I had written when I was pregnant, explaining everything. And his parents had always related his story to Moses. Jochebed loved Moses. She knew she couldn't keep him, so to save him, she gave him to somebody who could raise him and give him a better life. And that's how he had always known that he was adopted. So we communicated back and forth. A couple weeks later, I told Amanda. And when I called her, okay, this is going to get kind of tricky. When I called her, I said, I need to tell you something. And she said, he found us. And she said, Mom, I've been praying. So without me knowing, she had been praying that he would find us. And so then I have to tell my parents. They were in town, and we were eating lunch at Panera, and I'm sitting across the table from him, and I think, okay, I've got to tell him. And I think I was more afraid to tell him that I had been communicating with Michael than I was to tell him I was pregnant 20-something years ago, earlier. So I tell him, and my dad just sits there. As a daddy's girl, you never want your daddy to be disappointed in you. And I thought, well, here we go. I've done it again. And Mom was asking all of the questions. Is he happy? Is he healthy? Is he married? Does he have children? Are you going to meet him? Blah, 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 blah. And Dad never said a word. A couple of days later, Dad sent me an email and apologized. And he had just kind of been in shock that it had all, as a dad, he wanted to be protective. You can't believe everything somebody tells you on an email. You need to be careful. Don't just jump into this thing. The Saturday before Mother's Day, 2011, we had made arrangements to meet. We met in Jackson because that was about halfway between. We met in a park. And for the first time, I felt my baby boy. And I heard his voice. Because everything had just been emails and texts. He's a millennial. They don't like to talk on the phone, they text. So up until this point, everything's just been emails and texts. And that day I heard his voice and felt his arms. So, like I said, that was not long after that. I think there's some pictures from the park. That's at his wedding in Jamaica a couple of years ago. That's not long after we met, we had a big family picnic. It was my mom, my dad, my younger brother, Amanda's family, Richard and Michael and me, and we all gathered at a park in Memphis so my parents could meet him. And that's the whole family. My older brother and my sister are not here. My older brother had died, and my sister had COPD. So she wasn't there. And my sister never got to meet him. My sister and I have never been close. We were never close growing up or even as adults. But after Michael found me and we started talking, my sister and I actually had a semi-normal sisterly relationship for a while. Every grandchild and great-grandchild has gotten a sock monkey. Our family, we call them Pee-wees. So 27 years later, Michael got his Pee-wee.
This is kind of an acceptance into the family.
I guess, yeah. The only difference is his doesn't have clothes. All the other ones had clothes, but she said she didn't know how to dress him. She didn't know what he liked. So not long after this meeting, they told my granddad. My granddad was just the greatest man that ever walked the face of the earth. And they told him, and that Christmas after we had all met, my grandfather always had envelopes at Christmas, and he handed everybody their envelope. There were amounts, and that year he had an envelope for Michael even. So it was just like all of a sudden, it's like that we were complete. The circle had been put back together. And that's Michael with my mom and dad. And that's Michael with my grandsons. My grandsons called him Amanda's secret brother. She had her stepbrother, when they would go to her dad's house, her stepbrother would never come out of his room. So Russ would walk through the house and they would say, "Who's that?" She would, "That's my brother." I went, "No, he's not." So Russ was the fake brother. Then she had a brother, a half-brother, and he was her real brother, and Michael was the secret brother. But they adore Uncle Michael now. This is Michael's mom and dad divorced when he was 7 or 8, and his dad remarried. And this is Michael's stepmom's family. She has a family reunion every year, Labor Day, and my entire family is invited to go. So this is my new extended family. Part of it. This is not even all of them, but they have embraced and adopted my entire family.
Okay.
This is Michael and his 3 moms. This is his stepmom, and this is Phyllis. This is the woman that adopted him, and Michael and me. And this was at Michael's engagement party, and they had told, this was the first time that Phyllis had just found out a couple of weeks earlier that we had been communicating all these years. She has some health issues and some substance abuse issues, so they were afraid how she would react. So he didn't tell her until he had to tell her, because we were all going to show up at an engagement party. And she was talking to Donna when I got there. And Donna said, Phyllis, Tracy's here. And Phyllis said, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. And they said, you've got to do it. This is not about you. This is about Michael. This is Michael's night. And so I walked up to her, and when she turned around, she just hugged me, and she goes, I've prayed for you every day. And she told me she loved me over and over again, and I've prayed for you every day. And she walked me around, because, at engagement parties, you have embarrassing photos of the couple as children. So she walked me around and talked about every picture of him and showed me. And I kept letters. I told her that I still had the plaque that she had sent me. And it was just, there's never been any animosity there, any threat. I never wanted her to feel like I was coming in and taking over what she had worked all these years to be a mom. And now here comes this, he calls me bio mom. Here comes bio mom, and she's going to take over. I didn't want that. And in fact, if it had been to that, I had told him that I wouldn't come to the engagement party. But it couldn't have worked out any better.
Wow. The next one here is...
That's me and my 2 kids. It's funny, the Mother's Day after we met, somebody here asked me, we were doing the love feast, and somebody asked me how many kids I had, and for the first time, I said 2.
Wow. Well, sum up how you think God was a part of all this.
Well, Romans 8:28 tells us that all things work together for the good to those, and I'm paraphrasing, for those that love the Lord. It's all worked out. It's all because of an email and a tough decision to give a baby up. That everything's worked out good, and then my very favorite scripture is Jeremiah 29:11, where he tells us that he has plans for us, plans to prosper us, plans for our futures. And when Richard and I first met and married, we would talk about our pasts, and he would say, I wish we had met sooner so you wouldn't have had to go through things that you went through. And I said, but you wouldn't have liked me sooner. Every mountain I've climbed, every hole and ditch I've dug myself out of made me who I am today. And it's by the grace of God that I'm sitting here.
Wow. What advice would you give to a lady, a mother, who is having a child out of wedlock like you had and is contemplating abortion?
Consider adoption. I know personally today of at least 3 couples who would give anything for a baby. You have to be in the right frame of mind. I don't recommend going through it alone. Have a support system to go through it, but give the baby a chance. You know, I never considered Michael a mistake. Michael was unplanned. I got caught. There's a lot of things that I didn't get caught at that I did. I got caught with Michael, but he was never a mistake. A mistake's only a mistake when you don't learn from it. So if you can learn from it, and you can give this baby a better home, a better life. God made that baby. And there's somebody out there that wants to love that baby just like you would.
What is your relationship now with Michael, and what is Amanda's relationship with Michael?
We're just one big happy family. Like I said, we don't see each other often. He's still in Memphis. Amanda's in Jackson. He's learning to be a chef, so he works quite a bit. But we see each other every chance we get. He's at every Christmas, birthday party that he can be at. It's just like he's always been in the family. It's like you fill a hole that you didn't know was empty, and he filled the hole in the family. You know, Amanda's dad died 6 weeks ago, I think, and Michael came to the funeral just to be there for his sister. Warren and Donna came to the funeral home just to be there to support Amanda.
Wow.
So it's.
I wonder if you might have any questions or comments for Traci. When we first met here before the show started, we thought, well, they may not have any questions, but they might want to have some comments of support. Because I know the ladies group here supported you greatly, didn't they?
Especially the Wednesday night ladies class. Carlene was teaching it when all this was going on, and it was almost as hard to tell them as it was to tell my parents, because they thought I was a good person. And what would they think of me now? But Carlene read, Michael and Amanda and I all wrote after our meeting. We all wrote something. If you're ever looking for a good cry, go read notes on Facebook. And Carlene read everything that I wrote. Nyla Sherrill was one of the first people that I showed a picture from the day we met. So my church, this place was just a huge support. Richard was just amazing through it all. We had gone to a hockey game a few weeks later, and Jordan Tutu was my favorite Predator at the time. And Jordan's father's nickname is Barney. Well, my dad's nickname is Barney. And I said, hey, I wonder if we're related. And he goes, no more surprise relatives, please. So, I mean, my family was just so supportive. And, you know, I was in a different place. There was a reason that God waited until Michael was 27 years old for him to find me, for Amanda to be accepting of it.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
I would like to know if your whole family ever got back into the church and became close in the church again after all that.
My parents did. My sister did not. She died 3 or 4 years ago. She did for a while, but she did not. About 5 years ago, I called my parents every Sunday night at 8 o'clock. And when I called one Sunday night, they said, well, we just got home from church, and you could have heard a pin drop in my house. As it was the first time my parents had been back in church, other than when they went with my grandfather. But they are back in church, and they are very active. And Amanda is children's director at her church. She homeschools 2 kids, And that's not enough, so she borrows a kid 3 days a week and babysits.
I knew Richard's wife that was killed in the freak accident. We graduated from high school together, and she was a wonderful person. And I think it's great that God was able to bring you two together, that you could comfort each other and be such supporters for each other. I think it's a wonderful thing that has occurred. Just want y'all to know that.
Thank you, thank you. It took a lot. I was single for 20 years. When we first got married, I would call from work and go, hey, I'm going to run to Walmart. And he'd say, well, come home, come by the house and I'll take you. And I went, well, what part of I'm going to Walmart did you not hear me say? So it's been a huge learning experience for me to depend on somebody.
Just thank you for sharing your testimony,
Sure.
because like what Larry said, the advice that you can give to somebody else that's going through this, that abortion is not a choice. Adoption, I mean, 9 months of your life. That's the thing. Speak to that. What was, did you feel like it was never going to end, or was it in a blink and it was, because that's the thing I think, and people need encouragement. It's 9 months, man. Just hang in there for 9 months. And then you give the love of a child to somebody who can't have one.
It was a long 9 months. I won't lie. Like I said, I drank a bottle of Fletcher's Castoria trying to have a baby. But I was of the mindset that changing my mind and keeping the child was never an option for me. And it was 9 months. And if, my thought process was, if 9 months of me being uncomfortable can give somebody just a little bit of the joy that my daughter had given me already, it's 9 months, it's worth it. And I was in a different place because I had a child. It might be different had I not had a child already. But I would never, ever, ever, ever recommend abortion.
Thank you for being with us.
Sure.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. Well, next month we're going to take a break for July 4th holiday and return August 1st with Jim Vernon. He's the author of a book entitled Life on the Porch. He will share how a comfortable lifestyle can be a hindrance to having a deeper faith in God. So that's in August 1st. So be with us on Stories of Amazing Grace. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being with us tonight.